HLPF on the impact of COVID-19 on local peace building. We ask you to please, hi, my name is Marina. I am the program officer of the civil society platform for Peacebuilding and Statebuilding. I'll be moderating our event today. We please kindly ask you to be on mute while not speaking. And thank you so much for joining us. So basically, with peaceful, just and inclusive societies, we know it's central to achieving progress on our sustainable development. And the COVID-19 pandemic presents a serious implications for conflict prevention and peacebuilding work globally. So the 2020 High-Level Political Forum presents an important opportunity to reflect on those challenges and opportunities in the field. So the civil society platform, for this reason, together with the Conducive Space for Peace, came together to co-host this discussion today to share recent findings and recommendations on the two recently reports launched on COVID-19 implications for peace building. The CSP report is called Act Now on Localization, COVID-19 Implications for Funding to Local Peace Building, and the CSPPS one is Fighting COVID-19, Building Peace, What Local Peace Builders Say About COVID-19, Civic Space Fragility, and Drivers of Conflict. Both reports engage with key challenges faced by local peace builders and explores opportunities to enhance support in this critical moment. I would like to start with our first panel, which will be with Peter Van Slaus, which is the CSPPS Secretariat Coordinator and Senior Strategist at Coordinate, and also with Christian Chigiri. Sorry if I said it wrong, Christian. He's the Program Advisor at CSP, and there will be giving a little bit of the framing to frame the discussion of today and present the key findings and recommendations of the recent released reports. So if I can ask Peter, please go ahead.
Thank you, Marina. I just had to unmute myself, so I'm here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, those who are in this call. Unfortunately, we're not meeting face-to-face in New York, but have a virtual meeting here via Zoom. So allow me to give you a little bit of a background on the report that we are launching. As Marina said, the Civil Society Platform for Peacebuilding and Statebuilding launched the report, Fighting COVID-19, Building Peace, a Civil Society Perspective, which narrates what local peace builders say about COVID-19, civic space, fragility, and drivers of conflict. CSPPS is a global network of civil society organizations, and we try to support peace-building efforts in fragile and conflict-affected settings. And with our members, we're jointly striving for inclusive societies and sustainable peace. At present, we operate in more than 25 fragile and conflict-affected countries. Ever since the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic unfolding, we have been in close contact with our platform members to learn about individual circumstances, their activities, and the way they were able to respond to the challenges they were confronted with. So we have been conducting surveys with them, one in March of this year already, and another one in late May. And subsequently, we have also been interviewing some of our members via direct discussions with them, and those interviews have been chronicled in a series of articles which we have also been launching and which are also featured in the report we now issued. In follow-up on the first survey that we sent out to our members, we felt the need to also issue a statement calling for a more whole-of-society approach and a more conflict-sensitive approach to combating the pandemic, because we saw that segments of society, including civil society, were not included in the approach and were not seen and recognized as first responders. So that message has been integral to our advocacy and also in the context of the International Dialogue on Peacebuilding and Statebuilding, which is a tripartite partnership in which we represent civil society. The report launched today builds upon that initial statement and tries to also tie together the outputs of the various data that we have been accumulating over the last couple of months. And it provides what I think a comprehensive outlook of the lived experiences of local peace builders as they face COVID-19 and its consequences. And I think it's essential that stakeholders in New York, in the context of the HLPF, but also national stakeholders, take note of frontline perspectives, as it is to inform policy and programming of all stakeholders, in order to be more inclusive and indeed embark on a more whole of society approach in responding to the challenges faced. The report that we are launching explores how the pandemic has affected civil society capacity to operate. One of the things that we have seen that the space for civil society is impacted by the way restrictions and measures are being taken. And it also confronts civil society actors and many of our stakeholders with the inability to actually do that work, given the fact that it's practical, very difficult to visit communities in person and to do the peace building work at the local level. We also describe in the report how local peace builders view the pandemic as a potential reason for conflict flaring up or occasioning violence and stimulating drivers of conflict. And what we also try to get as feedback from our members is to see what kind of recommendations they would have on how we can strengthen the coordination between the various actors at the national and the local level. How we can indeed ensure that civil society is being taken on board in inclusive strategies that plan for measures to be deployed against the COVID-19 challenges. And finally, I mean, the report also provides an overview of the activities that we have been undertaking in the context of the platform. Because I mean, what we have seen in the various responses received from our members is that COVID-19 has indeed turned lives upside down. I mean, as a global network, we're trying to watch the emerging trends closely and have shared the insights in the publication that we just launched. So let me also reflect shortly on some of those learnings emanating from the report. Firstly, on the constraints on the available space for more dynamic civic engagement. I think what we have seen is that there is indeed, by the restrictions taken at the national and subnational level, has been infringing the ability for civil society to conduct their peacebuilding activities. It has led to a reduction of available funding available for their activities. And it has also been used or maybe misused in certain contexts by governments and warring parties to actually seize more power, resulting in tensions and reduced civic space. As one of our members, I'm citing now, has described to us, some governments are exploiting the crisis to further restrict civil society space and increase authoritarian measures. Local peace builders fear that it will be difficult to reclaim this space after this crisis. And that is a serious observation, of course. I mean, that is something which we are alarmed about, and that is something which comes close to the heart of what the civil society platform stands for, in trying to ensure that the space for civil society to contribute, but also to be an actor and dialogue partner of other stakeholders should not be constrained by measures taken. And it should not be limited in a sense that the incorporation of civil society responses is not possible. The second main thread coming out of the report is that many members report on upticks in violence, instability and other drivers of conflict. This mention of corruption, mistrust, and severe endemic precarity. I mean, members express worry that their societies may as a result become more fragile, and that the long-term consequences will continue to be felt after the pandemic. Also this is a serious observation which I hope and we want to ensure that all stakeholders take this to heart. I mean, we don't want a situation that it leads to greater instability, and we see the primary results of the pandemic in front of us, but the secondary wave of impacts the pandemic is having is as serious as the health, direct health consequences. So what are some of the indicators or some of the things our members have been telling us? That there is an active suppression of population during lockdown. There's increased mistrust towards the government. There is corruption and violent suppression that may make societies more fragile. These spikes in violence, as they're being reported, include also harassment and other forms of brutality. And as I mentioned, I mean, secondary direct impact, as it is already happening, there's a clear loss of income for people, and the poverty is on the increase, which also results in tensions rising. The third aspect that I want to highlight is also reported by our members, that what they see on the ground is that the pandemic unfolding has also resulted in a spike in gender-based violence, including domestic and sexual violence, and that it is particularly women and youth who are disproportionately affected by the pandemic unfolding. And that is another serious concern which is laid down, and I'm sure that my colleague Fidel, who's here on the call, will speak to that later in making her observations. But the spikes in gender-based violence at home due to lockdown and loss of independence are also due to indeed the fact that this is a natural, unprecedented situation. Having no income, there's a lot of tension in the various spheres where people are trying to cope with the results of the pandemic unfolding. Last observation on what the report tells us is a more general remark which I want to make, and that is, to the fullest extent possible, the way the various stakeholders respond to the crisis unfolding should be in a way that interventions should be aimed at promoting an integrated approach. It should, as always, integrate elements of conflict prevention and peace building, together with promoting better health services and better health system in response to the crisis. The pandemic is not a public health emergency only, but it's a multidimensional crisis with complex, interacted effects, which poses challenges to peace building and exacerbates drivers of conflict. So any responses must reflect this complexity and seek to do no harm by taking care of what needs to be taken care of and not worsen its effect in one of the domains while combating it in one of the others. So integration of approaches, multidimensional crisis, and ensuring that do no harm should be the starting point of the interventions that are being thought of. Let me stop here. I want to invite you all to read the document. You can find it on our website, and let me stop here. Thank you. Over to you, Marina.
Thank you so much, Peter. Yeah, you mentioned very important points, especially faced by local peacebuilders in terms of the crisis unfolding and in relation to the civic space and how conflict has been affected and will in the future in terms of the pandemic and in terms of the governance as well. I would like to now hand over the floor to Christian. Please, Christian, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Marina, for the kind introduction, and thank you so much, Peter, for that very succinct presentation of the report that CSPPS has put forward. I would like first start by saying that this event really is quite important, not only in terms of just bringing to the fore voices of local peace builders responding to COVID-19, but also trying to identify as well ways that we can all build partnerships to support those who are really responding to the pandemic in different contexts. So my name is Christian Chito. As Marina has pointed out, I'm the program advisor for Conducive Space for Peace, which is a Danish-based organization that works on supporting local peace builders, particularly working on system transformation in the global peace building system to create and to foster the agency of local peace builders. So we are based in Copenhagen, but we work also with Peace Direct and Humanity United within the framework of Strategic Partnership for Peace, which is an initiative currently working in Colombia, Myanmar, and the Democratic Republic of Congo to support local peace builders as they respond to different challenges of systemic change that they're trying to address in their own context, not only within the local level, but also in translocal and global level. So my intervention is going to mainly highlight some of the findings that came out of two reports that Conducive Space for Peace has produced most recently. The first one has to do with local peace builders' response to COVID-19, and the one we just published almost a week ago now looks more specifically at the shifting funding modalities for funding local peace building efforts and what really needs to be happening and what international actors need to know and donors need to know in terms of supporting local peace building in this time. Now, one thing that I would like to also echo, as Peter has pointed out, is that funding for local peace building has completely shrunk. And this is not only because more funding is being directed to public health services and responding to COVID-19, but there is also a tendency to focus more energy on non-peace building efforts, while at the same time, as all of our reports highlight, there's need for supporting local peace builders. In a very succinct manner, one thing that I would like also to add is that, at least in our report that we launched earlier on local peace builders' response to COVID-19, one thing that they've highlighted is that the COVID-19 crisis and the response to it is exacerbating the underlying root causes of conflicts, particularly inequality. And in some places, this means violence is being reignited and peace processes are threatened. Government responses are not adequately conflict sensitive, and shrinking civil space for already marginalized groups is escalating conflict. The second point that I would like also to add to that element is that COVID-19 responses, while being looked at more in terms of public health response, are also part of peace building and should also be understood as peace building. Local peace builders who in Congo, in Myanmar, in Colombia, and other conflict-sensitive contexts are using their responses to also address some of the systemic challenges that affect conflict in their context and to address some of the conflict challenges that they come across on a day-to-day basis. Small local peace building organizations are at the front line of peace building during this crisis. And this is one thing that we've noted all throughout, is that local peace builders did not fold their arms when the crisis happened, but they actually responded more creatively to trying to address community challenges, supporting elders in their communities. In places like Cameroon, we've seen local peace builders even creating hand sanitizers, making hand sanitizers and face masks and distributing them in their own communities. All these pointing to the responsiveness and the agility of local peace builders in responding to the pandemic. But unfortunately, they have also been hit the most when it comes to funding. One of the main findings of the report that Conducive Space for Peace has recently published highlights that 4 out of 5 local peace builders have experienced a reduction in their funding for peace building following the onset of the pandemic and have had their peace building programs suspended. Local peace builders are uniquely and severely impacted financially by COVID-19 in a way that places their very survival at risk. The time is now, therefore, to act to support these organizations that are critical to sustainable peace building, needed now and in also the post-pandemic context. Peter has also echoed the challenges that women are particularly facing in this time, and we've received a lot of concerns from women peace builders, and some of whom I'm glad will be speaking later on in the panel discussion. Rashida and Comfort, Rashida from Nigeria and Comfort from Rashida from Uganda, and Comfort from Nigeria will also share their own personal experiences working with women during this particular pandemic time and some of the particular issues related to gender inequality, related to domestic violence that Peter also highlighted earlier. Another element that came out of the report is that international organizations play a critical role as interlocutors in securing funding and appropriate support for local peace builders, and must negotiate with bilateral donors and private foundations to promote and secure more easily accessible and flexible funding to local peace builders. Sometimes NGOs are the sole ambassador for local organizations who need critical support to continue their work. And this is really one of the key elements that the report on shifting funding modalities has highlighted, is that international organizations, indeed in this time working on peace building, are the very launchpad or the stepping stone towards getting access to funding for local peace builders. And if they can get supported as well, then local peace builders will also benefit from that support. And then finally, I would like to point to the last point that has come from both of our reports, is that donors have the power to ensure that intermediary organizations channel as much funding as possible to local organizations. If they are not able to support local peace builders directly, donors must ensure that the requirements they ask of international organizations and other intermediaries are reinforcing their ability, the ability of these organizations to provide relevant, adequate, and sustainable support to local peace building. And I think this is also key, because as COVID-19 continues to affect funding not only for local peace builders, but also for international organizations working on peace building in some of the contexts that we are engaged in, it's quite critical that donors, bilateral actors, support these international organizations and make sure that funding that is channeled through them reaches the key needing organizations on the ground that need that support to continue their work. I will leave it there, and sure Comfort and Rashida will also add a lot of great insights based on their work on the field. And thank you so much again for tuning in, and looking forward to the continued discussion.
Thank you so much, Christian, for highlighting these important points on the COVID-19 implications for funding to local peace building. As Christian mentioned, like, what is important of these events today comes now. Of course, the reports are really meaningful and important, but we are going to now have a panel session with 4 local peace builders, and they will, on the COVID-19 impact for civil society in their context. Before, please allow me to introduce a bit these 4 local peace builders. So we have Rashida. Rashida is an Ugandan-based actress, director, and award-winning poet. She's the founder of the Sophie Manawika Institute of Art for Change, a non-profit organization that uses theater for peace building. Her work seeks to use narratives for healing and reconciliation in post-conflict areas or areas vulnerable to conflict. Rashida also advocates for the inclusion of artists in peace building and for the use of performance arts in conflict transformation. We also have today Fidel Jeba, which Fidel is a social worker, civil society peace and human rights activist, a youth development expert, and also a writer and film producer. We have a lot of artists today. Fidel, being the founder of Association Rayon de Soleil, which was established in 2006, has dedicated herself for the advancement of the girls, child, and young women agenda in Cameroon. For the past 5 years, she has been actively involved in engaging women in peace process. We also have James, commonly called Jimmy, and he's the executive director for Platform for Dialogue and Peace in Liberia, which is a Liberian peace-building NGO involved in research and participatory action activities. P4DP was established out of UN and inter-peace collaboration and became autonomous Liberian non-governmental in 2012. Lastly but not least, we have Comfort Atta. She is a peace ambassador and an activist that has championed peace building work at community level, established an organization, a foundation to empower women and youth in the area of peace building, conflict resolution, sexual and gender-based violence. I welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being here with us. If possible for the speakers to turn on their videos would be great to see you, but if not, it's also okay. I would like to start the panel discussion asking to you what has been if you could highlight 2 recent challenges and opportunities that the pandemic created for your peace building work. Who would like to go first?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good afternoon, good morning, and it's a good evening from Nigeria, but this is afternoon right now in Nigeria. It's nice having us to have this kind of discussion. I'm going to be very, very brief. The pandemic has actually exposed us to a lot of challenges, and as well in the midst of the challenges, we were also able to bring up an innovative ideas that has created an opportunity as well for the women at grassroots level. So 2 of the challenges that I would always like to talk about is the first challenges is everybody has restrictions to movement, and there, of course, the risk of contacting COVID-19 also was there for both the local peace builders and as well as the community people. It's one of it. And then another challenges I have experienced is delay in response to addressing issues in the community, because even with the lockdown due to the pandemic, there's an increase in crime. And as such, what do you do? Those things are natural, they happened, and there should be a response to it. But here in Nigeria, the system has been completely locked, and we don't have we are not like advanced to be doing an online and court sections. So because the courts are not in sections, we have experienced a lot of delay. Then the other one is fear. We, these organizations, CSOs, we are afraid because we hardly had enough resources. And now with this pandemic, it makes it more difficult and worse to have resources and opportunities. So these are the fears, the challenges that we have. And the opportunities we have as an organization, as I said earlier, we, out of the pandemic situation lockdown, we feel that local peace building work has to continue since there are a lot of challenges in the community coming up, crimes and the rest. We decided at organizational level, Ash Foundation, we decided to develop what we call a community peace observers, which we established in the 20 local government of our state. And the other challenge that we're faced with is not all of them have smartphones or phones. Some of them that have phones, they have hardly electricity supply, or they don't have enough data to be able to communicate. So, but then with those challenges, we're still able to overcome it with the little resources we have, and then we're able to provide some of them with smartphone, and some other we use security people to send it to the community because there's no movement. So that was also an innovation of how to pass across the smartphone to them. And then we were able to send them recharge card so that so that they'll be able to communicate. And as such, the peace building work continues, where they were able to represent their each local community and during the lockdown, and they are communicating situations and reporting incidents and the gender-based violence that is going on and the poverty level that they are being exposed to. So that is how we've been like communicating. There were the opportunities that we got. We also got another small funding, very small, and the funding has stopped. Unfortunately, it's just for 3 months, and then we're done with it. But right now, there's still restriction in Nigeria, some part of Nigeria, especially Bauchi. The movement is very slow, where the local peace building still need, people at grassroots still need more assistance. But right now, there's no funding to continue with that particular project. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Comfort. Really good to hear. And also relating to the innovation, that's very important point. If I may pass over to Fidel.
Okay, thank you, Marina. Okay, first of all, I would like to apologize because my English may not be the best. So I'm a French speaking, so I'll try and then bear with me. So I would like also to thank Peter and Christian because in their presentations, they actually captured all the challenges we civil society organizations are facing on the ground. I want to also mention, in addition to what they've already said, that is we civil society organizations have organizational or infrastructural challenges. Lot of partners, lot of donors actually suspended their fundings, so making our activities more challenging, especially in the remote communities. So because they have suspended or some have readjusted their projects, but not really, we are not really comfortable with that. So almost all the projects for this year are suspended because of the restriction of international flights and all those things. So it is really, really actually challenging, making us not even to meet, because you know in our context we are not used to Zoom meetings. Our electricity or internet connectivity is not the best, so we are not used to that. And then almost all our beneficiaries, our targets are in the remote villages, so not having funding has made things very, very difficult. We cannot bring them the support. And then also, one thing I want to mention here is that we have also to protect our staff and our volunteers. So involving them in the raising awareness or all those kind of activities around the COVID-19 is actually exposing them. So it is really, really difficult for us actually to encourage people to work, whereas we don't know how we can actually support even the staff if they have any issue there. But still they are doing things because we are really happy. You asked about the opportunities we have. One of our opportunities is that we previously trained some volunteers, like in the past 6 months, we trained about 50 volunteers in the communities to provide psychosocial support in their communities. So because of this pandemic and the restrictions in our movement, we have been able to use them to raise those raising awareness activities in their communities, and they are doing the best. One of the things we are really happy, we are really proud of, is the fact that we train them how they can actually find local support to support those people, those victims of Boko Haram. And some of them did really great job because they have been able to find local support, and they support those people in those villages. So we are happy that more and more donors now, like the embassies here and there, are trying to put in place some small support, some small grants. This is something good, but the amount is so limited that you can just do like the raising awareness and then maybe give some protective materials to the people. But the opportunities, we just want to call them to do more. Because we are really afraid of the post-pandemic effect. That is the long-term effect of this pandemic. So we need them actually to support our organization, to sustain our activities. It is not because of COVID that we should stop the peace-building activities we are already doing. So that maybe I want to stop here and then wait for another question. Thank you.
Thank you, Fidel, especially on highlighting the post-pandemic and the long impact in the work of local peacebuilders. Hashida, if you can please put your point.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's evening in Uganda. I think following the report, it captures most of the issues that have been raised, especially the struggles of civil society to, contact the people that we work with, get to the local ground, to really the people who are most affected. And for me, I think that COVID-19 only highlights one thing, that we do need to change the way we've been doing the things. I mean, and that's a big challenge in its own self, to wake up and realize that the system that as civil society that we have in place, for example, most civil society, we do a lot of workshops and go down to the community and engage in the community. And COVID-19 possesses a challenge that we need to think about how we engage the local community and how we deliver our services to them, because this could easily become the new normal. What happens when we can't access the people that we really want to reach out to. So for me, I think it's been one of the biggest challenge to think about how do we reinvent our work, what's the way forward, and also to really ask if the kind of approaches we've been using as civil society, if it's sustainable, you know, if it's sustainable. And I think that these are very key questions that the situation has brought to mind for us that we need to ask ourselves as we move forward. We definitely cannot go back to the way we've been working. We definitely cannot go back as civil society to the way we've been working. And there are questions and challenges because, you know, they ask you to think, they call you forward to reinvent new systems and new ways to engage people, because if you're in a country like Uganda, realize that the most affected people don't have access to technology, don't have access. So personally, I work mostly with women in the border regions. And I remember when COVID started, we had a project that was ongoing. And the first question was, I mean, these are women who don't even have a basic phone. And the first question was, how are we going to contact them? You know, we can't travel, we can't access them. And it did really put on the table of how do we reinvent ourselves as civil society to reach these communities that we can only reach physically in case, you know, this becomes the new normal. Also, another thing that's a challenge, an opportunity for the same time, I think that COVID has given us the opportunity to see if the work that we've been doing in communities is sustainable, and also given the people in the communities the opportunity to take charge. For example, a lot of times as civil society, especially as local peace builders, we enter into the community and yes, we work with the people in the community, but it's always our information to them, you know. But COVID has made us realize and just watch, you know, just observe the communities and see what they can do for themselves and their own efforts that they've put at the front. And I think that that challenge of not being able to reach them has also presented an opportunity, because now we can identify the strengths of these communities. We can see what they can do by themselves. And so that means our work is more about supporting these efforts or strengthening these skills rather than the other way around where we were, you know, giving new information. So I think that that's given me and myself and a lot of other peace builders I talk about, you know, something to think about of what are their own strengths and how can we support them. So I think for me, those are the two things that are challenges, but also opportunities to think and reinvent ourselves at the same time.
Great, thank you, Rashida. Indeed, I think that rethinking our work and the sustainability, the impact, it's really a challenge, but also can be an opportunity for sure. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Jimmy, if I may ask you to put your challenges and also opportunities that you see in your work during this pandemic, please go ahead.
Well, thank you again. And I guess we will be repeating the same thing because these two reports, Christian and Peter, clearly sort of highlight some of the problems we face in our respective countries. In terms of challenges in my country, Liberia, you see that the imposition of state of emergency and the accompanying measures, for example, the restriction on movement, closures of businesses, which are sometimes the sources of income for people and their livelihood, restriction on freedom of speech, the press are not allowed to engage in certain businesses and everything. I mean, these are fundamental challenges to what we do as civil society and sometimes how we navigate our way in state of emergency and at the same time trying to continue with our aspiration of being that intermediary between the society and the government. The difficulties in the collection of data, especially for organizations like ours that involve what we call participatory action research, is quite difficult. Documenting some of what we see, especially when you are asked to have social distancing and reporting on some accurate issues, these are challenges that we experience, especially at this time of COVID-19. Also, we realize that making our own government, I'm talking about the current government, to see CSO as partners rather than competitors, especially where international funding seems to be dwindling, obviously because of problems around the world. And then civil society begin to be seen as those competitors rather than the group that can bring in some creative, innovative approach to resolving some of our developmental challenges. We also see that there are some opportunities. During national crises of this nature, there's always the tendency to go beyond what divides people and force collectively to look at things that bring the greater good of the community and the society. So it's easy at this point, through the COVID-19, that we say in Liberia has no exception for the race, the poor, the civil society actors, the health workers, everyone has been affected. So there's a possibility to work beyond what we are known for. Again, it's much easier to mobilize people during such a period and come in with some action than it will be before such a crisis. An opportunity exists also for us to harness those access and capacity that we have experienced, especially countries like ours that went through the Ebola crisis in 2014. I think Liberia also has the opportunity to share its experience, because even the rich country and the developed West that today battling with the pandemic has some difficulties understanding how to trace, contact tracing, and some of those issues that you need to put into play as a way of mitigating and minimizing the spread of the virus. So I think those are opportunities that we can also learn to societies beyond our border. So these are just some succinct opportunities and the challenges I'd like to share for the moment. Thank you. Over.
Great, thank you, Jimmy. But getting to the point where you mentioned about how the Liberian government sees society and as more competitor instead of really an ally at a certain extent, I would like to ask you, the four of you, if you can, where does the inclusion stand in your context to build inclusive national efforts for the crisis, peace, and development? How do you see this inclusion by, especially I think from your government, but in general as different stakeholders in this point? If you could share with us. Who would like to go first? May I ask Jimmy, because you were already mentioning similar points, if you can more in depth to talk about this inclusion part in fighting or finding measures.
Yes. Of course. Like I said, we experienced Ebola epidemic 2014, 2015. And experience from the fight against Ebola has shown us that the government could not do that alone. The involvement of civil society was inevitable. We know that at the onset, the government, the former government of Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, sort of approached the containment through a militarized approach by deploying the military, as most government would do in health epidemic, thinking that is the easier way to do it. But it only exacerbated the problem, created more fear, and gave room to misconception. Until there was a realization that we have to go back on the drawing board and sit with the civil actors, community leaders, religious leaders, and see how we can discuss and collectively come up with some approach to this problem. So that's what a breakthrough, and it shows that no matter how much the society is well advanced, or how much you have in terms of your health infrastructure, when you face sort of epidemic of this nature, you have to go beyond the norm that has been the way of doing business. So this is where we see collectivism as a basic of addressing greater societal problem than the usual approach. That's what I meant. At the same time, recognizing that civil society, my colleagues are all spoken on the funding space, and that is also affecting us. But again, this is where you need a government that would go beyond just looking at funding and looking at the added value that non-state actors bring to this discourse. So I think we have to start thinking how we learn from what we've done in the past and see how we harness the gains we made. And until state and non-state actors can act together, I think we are still going to have some huge problem overcoming the pandemic. That's what I meant when I say state had to change the mind, the government has to change the perception of civil society as a competitor.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Very good points. Hashida, how is for you in your context this part?
Okay, thank you, Marina. Talking about this in inclusion, in our own context, we are happy to see that more and more the government is involved in more and more civil society during the security meetings. And this is a good thing because in the past we were not seeing that. So a lot of effort have been made. But our worry is that we are just afraid that they are just, the civil society is just represented, but their concerns are not really taken into consideration. It seems like they are invited just to attend, even though if they make a recommendation, we are not sure that the government will actually take into consideration all those recommendations made by civil society. But they are always present each time they are needed. And one thing is also because the civil society is not really strong in our country. We have many platforms, we have a lot of networks of organizations working on the same issues, on the same topics, and that makes it really challenging, and then we don't really know who is representing civil society actually in our country. So there is a structural Rashida was talking about a system. So we need actually to reinforce, to strengthen civil society before actually we can influence like those decisions from the government. Talking about this COVID pandemic, I'm not sure that our government actually consulted civil society to come up with a plan. We have our head of state who decided of some measures who are actually good. We have the Minister of Public Health who also have some measures, but we didn't see actually a consultation with civil society where they can come actually with a national action plan. So that actually is missing in our context. I think we need to build a strong network of civil society in our country so that we can be really effective while taking decisions in our context.
Thank you, Fidel. And you, Hashida, how do you see that?
Thank you for to the previous speakers. I will take it down. I'll remove the word civil society and I'll call it local peace builders, because I feel like civil society is huge, and I feel like I'll speak for the local peace builders. I think like I'll add to Christian's voice, and I think I've said this often, that we need to define and educate and create awareness for what peace building is. Because especially to the government and the whole structure, because if people don't understand what peace building is, and they don't know where peace builders come in, because I feel like for most people, they understand peace building as only, conflict prevention or ending war or coming in between, a war between countries or between tribes. So because in this case, I really assumed that local peace builders should have been on the forefront of any kind of response, because that's our job. But what happened, it felt like there are local peace builders and then there's a government. And so it felt like, okay, guys, you can go to sleep. Right now, the government is taking over and you'll wake up when, when we're done. And I felt that local peace builders are people that people trust, that communities trust, and coming from their own leaders, coming from people who have been doing the work. And I felt that both the authorities should have utilized this kind of trust. But it also comes from the fact that people do not really understand what peace building is and what different sectors involve peace building. And this is a topic that we ask: what is peace building? Who is a peace builder? And what are all the different elements of peace building, for example? And so if I think as civil society and as local peace builders, we need to do the work to really say, this is peace building and this is how it looks, and this is all the different kind of peace building, so that we can be effectively used. Because if we are available and the government does not realize that we could be of use and of help in a huge response like this, then we need to do a lot of work as local peace builders and as civil society to educate, to educate the masses and educate the government what exactly entails peace building and the different sectors. Because I do realize there are very different sectors. There are people who are into conflict transformation, there's also conflict prevention, the people who are doing the healing work and rehabilitation work, there are people who are doing gender violence and all those things, and all this is peace building. And if they don't understand the different sectors and how to tap into this energy and this work that's already on ground, then there really cannot be a marriage, a coalition for us to work hand in hand. And that has really showed here in Uganda, where all the response to COVID-19 has been top down, and we are cut off from the communities that we work with, so you can't really help. Although there's also been a huge movement by local peace builders, and they've tried. I for one, know that the communities that we work in, we've had to seek government permission to continue to work in these communities and to continue to talk to these women, and we've been granted this permission. But for me, I think that the point is that generally we need to educate and create awareness for what peace building is, because I do really feel COVID-19 response was a peace building job that the governments did not utilize the task force that was out there, the local peace builders that were out there. So I feel that we do have a lot of work on our hands to create that kind of awareness.
Yeah, it's a very good point. We need to understand that this COVID-19 response and long-term work is not only a health problem, it's actually very much linked to our work, for sure, indeed. Comfort, would you like to share with us in Nigeria what is this aspect?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think most of my colleagues have said everything. Like what Rashida just said was okay. It was what the same experience here in Nigeria. But I'm going to talk about my own state in Nigeria. The local peace builders are not recognized. And the reason, because she said we need to create more awareness, which is true. I think when I started this peace building work, 2013, and I was trying to get other organizations to join us to amplify our voice. I look like, how can you be doing peace building work? You don't need peace building work. Everywhere is peaceful. And I kept telling them, because it's peaceful is the reason why you should do the peace building work, to increase the peace. Because the reason why you and I are here today talking like this is because there's peace. It's because some other people have in time past talked about the peace, and people understand the context of the peace. So peace, the peace builders in my state where I am, we have a forum. And that forum, the inclusion in Nigeria with government is a whole log of quarrel, a challenge between the local peace builders and the government structures, because they feel we are watchdogs. They call us watchdogs, and they feel we can amplify and kind of whisper what we see is not correctly done. And as such, they don't put us like what Felder said in Cameroon. They just invite you for program. They don't include you in decision making. Even when you make suggestions, your suggestions will be captured there, but it will not be effective when you're gone. So there's a way they do this thing so that you won't say, okay, the local peace builders are no longer inclusive. Now they are inclusive, but their voices are still not heard. There's a way they just remove us, and you just see yourself being present in the name of being present at occasion. Okay, like recently, this pandemic situation, women are not taken into decision, and when they were making decision in the context of the pandemic challenges, how to handle the COVID-19, women were not given, we're not putting into serious consideration. We have pregnant women, we have breastfeeding mothers, where hospitals are not totally functional. And some of these people in the community, they cannot access the urban hospital. Even the rural hospitals are also not as available as we think. So it makes things a little bit difficult. We've had to lose some women into childbearing, you know, some breastfeeding mothers, children have to die due to malaria, so many other things. Why? Because the government is not putting women in the context of their decision, that is the inclusion in all their plannings. And then with this pandemic, it makes it even worse. The civil society are known. The government are refusing, I want to use the right word, the government are refusing to include us. Even though you could see physical inclusion, attending meetings, they call you once in a while. And when they feel, okay, the international organizations like World Bank are like, okay, we have to carry the civil society along, then that is when they will not look for a civil society that is maybe connected to them, that will not be able to challenge their decisions, or maybe not challenging like quarrel, that will not be able to go against their decision to say, no, this thing is not right, this is the way to do it to make it impactful and get a maximum. So they always look for a civil society, a weaker peace builder or a weaker civil society to include in their meeting, not people like us that are active in the state working. Like recently, we've done a lot of radio program. I've done a lot of TV programs, radio programs all over the state. And the wife of the governor, Her Excellency, have to call on my number, because while the program is going on, we're like putting up our numbers. You can call us to lodge a complaint of whatever kind of issues it is on SGBV. So we got a call from her, and she called us. I attended the meeting at Government House, and the police commissioner was represented, and other few people were there, about 9 of us. And she said, I want to create a platform, and I want to include you. I've had a lot of your program. What do we do? Now, I have given her my advice. It's been 3 weeks now. Nothing has been done about it. But did she look for me? Yes. That was an inclusion. Just because the Nigeria system is putting up a committee right now on, they call it anti-gender-based violence committee management right now in Nigeria by the president. So she decided to quickly act, because they realized that money is going to come into every state. So, and then for that place to be functional, they quickly have to, you know, actively act, but it's still not functional. We don't know what is happening. Okay, during the COVID-19, the palliative that were shared, civil society are supposed to be carried along. They were not carried along. Yet we had some civil society or peace builders we were represented by who? You asked me, I asked you, and we don't have answers to it. So let me just stop here. Virtually, they've said all, and it's similar everywhere. Thank you very much.
Great, Comfort. Thank you so much. And you already entered my next question, which, by the way, I would like to ask you to try, all of you now, from now on, to try to be a little bit brief, because we are almost over with this panel session. But I really would like to hear from you how the pandemic has exacerbated inequalities facing women and youth in your context. And I think that you entered already this topic, Comfort. So I would like to hear from the others how these inequalities been even bigger for women and youth in your context, please. If Fidel, if you can share with us in your context.
Okay, thank you, Marina. 2 months ago, we conducted a survey in 4 regions, that is the regions affected by crisis, by conflicts in Cameroon. And then our survey targeted 200 women and young women. So one of the main observations we made it is always the case, women are the most, at least I don't know how to say it, they are the ones paying the highest cost of the pandemic, as it is when it is a conflict or anything or any other social ills. So, or how they are hit by this pandemic, most of them complain that because of pandemic, most of their husbands actually have lost their jobs, and then they are putting their frustrations over the women at home. Other thing is that women are actually really suffering because the schools are closed down and all the children are at home. So they have to take care of the children. They are the one actually to find income, to find income for the family, because the man cannot actually afford anything. She has to bear the frustration from the husband. And then all women are really paying the highest cost, and we need to do something, especially during this COVID pandemic in the communities. Some of the women also complain when we talk about in the case of the Far region, a lot of humanitarian support. A lot of humanitarian organizations actually supported women in those communities, the victims. They gave them like support to run a small income generating activities, but with the restriction measures. They will tell you, okay, this is social distancing. In the market where you used to be like 30 person at the same place selling, they will tell you now we just admit 5 people. So where do the 25 others go? Because they don't know where to go and sell their goods. They spend 3 months to produce and then they don't know how to sell it. So those are the real challenges they are having in the communities. So women are really suffering. When we also take the case of the Northwest and Southwest context, because of the pandemic, the humanitarians actually cannot go down in the villages, in the bushes to bring them the support. And even a lot of women, because of this, actually displaced to other regions. So even the women who are suffering from HIV, they don't have follow-up. We cannot actually follow them because there's nothing, we cannot even find them. All of them, they are traveled, they are relocated to somewhere else. So we need actually, and that's why I was saying that there is no actually an integrated national plan. That is, the government should put in place, should do a consultation with the civil society so that we can actually tell them what is going on there and what the solution can be like, can look like. So this is actually challenging for women here in our, and then we have, because of a lack of resources, even young girls are going into prostitution. And this is another, more and more girls are being pregnant. So those are new issues we need to address because of this pandemic too. So this is for our, there are so many observations we made from that survey.
Great, thank you so much, Fidel. Really interesting and insightful points. Thank you. I'm actually I would love to have many other questions that I would like to make to all of you, but because of time, I'm going to make a last one, which I think it's very important for this event today and for our discussion, is that if I could hear from each one of you, what's your advice, recommendations that you have for the international actors and bilateral donors to support local peace building and beyond the pandemic? If I could start with you, Jimmy, could you share with us?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think like we all have almost the same problem. But I think some of the recommendations that I think will be helpful for this pandemic is for us to have something what I would consider a repository. You know, there's a need to have a kind of repository for best practices and lesson learned, because the pandemic have taught some good, bad lessons, but also some good lessons. So what we need to be able to have something that we can bank on whenever we are confronted with issue of this nature in the future. We also think it's important for NGOs to treat local NGOs as partners in the true sense of the word, by allocating resources, like I was hearing one of my colleagues just said in passing, something like that, on the basis of proportional responsibility. As you will agree with me, during the heat of this crisis, it's the local peace builder and the NGOs that are at the front liner. But as soon as things stabilizes, you realize that it's going back to the status quo. I think there's a need to re-look at the way we treat local partners, especially when they have to go through such very, very deadly crisis, and we don't go back to status quo as soon as things normalize it. International donors should also not shy away from informing and reminding government that peace builder, NGOs, civil society actors are critical development partners, and therefore need to be respected and involved in decision making. Well, I mean, my colleagues have said it. In Liberia, we say we are not only good to legitimize agenda, we want to be heard, and our decisions should also be counted. Should not bring us to the discussion only to legitimize the agenda. We also expect the international donors to undertake their own efforts to accepting some of those country development agenda. There's a practice of government saying this agenda has been formulated based on consultation. And sometimes when you scrutinize this agenda, it's just the inner cycle. It's not reflective of the aspiration of the entire populace. So international partners should make some effort to go beyond what government present as the country's national agenda. I think by doing that, you will be very inclusive. And sometimes regions, communities, ethnic groups have been excluded on the basis of some political consideration within the political context in every country. So by wholeheartedly accepting national agenda as development, agenda, sometimes excludes and discriminate other groups. So international actors should try to accepting whether those agenda are really and truly reflective of the aspiration of the populace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Hashida, if you can share with us very quickly, if possible, what's your recommendation, your message?
Okay, I think like I can only categorize 3 things that I think local peace builders need. And I think one of those, the biggest key thing is resources. And I feel like if international donors or players or funders could do 2 things. One of those could be mapping, mapping all the local peace builders. And there is a comment here about relationship with local governments. So I feel like a lot of local builders have established these relationships with local governments. And so the mapping system could be very easy if they could map and know who's where and who's doing what. And so they have a whole directorate of local peace builders. And in the same case, if they could create a directorate of funding and resources of themselves, and local peace builders can access this, so you know who is funding what and where and how can you access them. I mean, just to really make that relationship and journey easy for local peace builders, because a lot of these people do not have access to these resources. And also to put more emphasis on Christian's point, where like if international players are giving money to big NGOs, then there should be a recommendation of how do they give support to the people who are on ground. And I think these things can be generally solved by just really mapping, first of all, the people who are doing the work, where and how, and creating an online resource or local resource of, funders and resources that are out there so that local peace builders can access this. And the last one is maybe to kind of, put pressure on governments to really streamline these relationships. Because there is a comment from Keith who asks about if local peace builders could streamline the relationship with the government. And I feel that the local peace builders have done their work. Before you go anywhere, you need to talk to the local government, you need to submit everything that you do your research, you approach the government. But the government is not mandated. There's no one asking them of this. It's not a requirement for them. So then they won't have to work on that relationship. If it is a requirement, then the government could do the work as much as the local peace builders are doing the work. And that way the relationship will be streamlined. It will be easy for all of us to find who's doing what and who can we support where and how.
Great, thank you. Fidel, for you, very quickly. Well, Fidel is not there. Comfort, would you like to make a point on this?
Yeah, let me just say something quickly, even though I make it a bullet point. My advice to the international organization is this. We're talking about resources and funding. Yeah, there are a lot of calls for proposals for local peace builders, but we don't even have the ability to assess it. The standard is a little bit high for local peace builders. The requirement is so high that we cannot assess it. So my advice is to talk to international donors that are working in line with our organizers, the Conducive Space for Peace Building, and your own organization. You have already identified us. You have been mentoring us and working with us. You can be able to meet up with the standard if we can, so that you have already identified us, we will be able to assess resources through you, because you already identify us, and that is the reason why we're here. I'm sure this is not the first time I'm talking as a panelist here. I've been doing this meeting. So we want, if they can do that, they can otherwise make it a little bit flexible for us to be able to assess these resources. It's one thing for us to be the front line, know how to do this job and to be in the community. Then it's another thing for us to be able to assess the funding, the proposal that is out. And we also need capacity building. We don't have too much capacity, probably as international standard, and also creating a relationship like this, opportunities to share experience, both national and international, so that we can be able to create that kind of relationship with our government at local level for effective working environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Comfort. Fidel?
Okay, thank you, Marina. One of the recommendations we want to make here to the donors actually is to allow local organization propose the activities, because what we say is that the donors come already with their funds are already oriented, and those orientations do not always meet the requirements or what people need on the ground. So they should allow our organization on the ground to propose activities. And we are asking them to support long-term activities, because each time we have those projects for 3 to 6 months, you are under pressure and then you cannot create the impact you want. So if we have longer term projects, then we are sure that civil society organization can create the impact. And then Comfort just said we need capacity building. And then when those donors come, almost all the fundings are oriented to raising awareness. When we talk of peace, it is not just raising awareness. We need actually to provide space even for those organizations. Most of organizations need even offices to run their activities. We need funding like to support the victims during the intervention for the whole process, not just coming, raising awareness and going back, because there's many things involved when we talk about peace building. Thank you, Marina.
Thank you so much, Fidel. Before I go to the Q&A session, I think that Christian would like to speak some words. Please, Christian, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Marina, and thank you so much, Fidel, Kimi, Comfort, and Rashida, for all the excellent inputs that you've added to this wonderful conversation. And I'm really very much in agreement with every one of you on the points brought forward. I just wanted to quickly comment on a specific issue that I think even during this time of the pandemic has come forward from local peace builders, which is also the need to connect digitally. As we all know, we are able to do this call because we are using technology. But I'd like to ask my colleague from Humanity United, who is also joining this call, Lexi Maran, who is actually supporting and leading this initiative that Peace Direct Conducive Space for Peace and Humanity United have recently launched called the Digital Inclusion for Peace initiative, which I think would be a really excellent tool and resource for so many of us trying to use peace building during this time. So if Lexi, you can unmute yourself, maybe say 1 or 2 words about it, that would be really very useful.
Sure, thank you. Christian, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful, thanks. Sorry I can't turn my video on, but thank you for giving me the space to add a few words here, and thanks to all the panelists for bringing your insight and experience into this space. Just wanted to say a few words about this initiative that Christian mentioned, Digital Inclusion for Peace. It was launched back in May as a response to hearing from local peace builders, as Christian mentioned, the need to connect digitally in this time. And there's 3 components to the initiative. One being a fund for small grants to improve access to whether it's equipment, software subscriptions, airtime, Wi-Fi, and we're accepting applications for that. Also a online platform where which Christian facilitates wonderfully, and it's a space for local peace builders to connect about kind of what's happening in the pandemic context and how folks are adapting their work. And lastly, we've just launched in partnership with Build Up a digital peace building 101 course that's kind of an introduction to how to adapt peace building to digital spaces in this time where that's becoming more and more necessary. So all of this can be found on our website online, shiftpowerforpeace.org, and I can add that in the chat as well. But yeah, just encourage folks to share this in your networks to whoever you think might benefit from these resources. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Very interesting. If you can provide more information on the chat box so people can actually go to ask for more information or read more about it, would be great. Having said that, thank you all the panelists. It was really, really interesting and really amazing. Thank you so much for your great work, and everything that you shared with us today. I would like to open the floor for questions and answers. I have here already 2 questions. One is from Case. It says, beyond creating awareness of the role local peace builders play, should we be thinking of how the relationship between the government and local peace builders can be streamlined? So who would like to answer this, like from the panelists and also from Peter and Christian? I think I have a shy crowd. Peter, would you like to answer the question?
What you want me to answer, Marina? I have to repeat the question. I don't hear you.
Sorry. How do you think that the relationship between the government and local peace builders could be streamlined?
Yeah, no, I was thinking, I was looking at the comments made by Keith, and I was reflecting on that. So one of the aspects that what we do as the platform, civil society platform for peacebuilding and statebuilding, is that we both have a global presence, but also a national presence. And Jimmy and Fidel are testimony of that. They are representatives in 2 of the countries on the continent that we are active. What we try to do is to build a coalition of civil society organizations, or local peace building organizations, organizations working on conflict prevention and peace building issues, to bring them together and to have them unite on a common agenda, and then subsequently stand stronger in the advocacy and the outreach to other stakeholders, including government, including local government. Out of the notion that if you unite and come together and share concerns on basis of a larger group, you might be more impactful. But it's also a way of exchanging lessons learned and providing a domain or an arena where civil society organizations or peace building organizations can actually exchange lessons and learn from each other. Many of you were in this call. Both Fidel and Jimmy, but also CSP, are a member of the platform, and that is an entry point, I think, for joining that growing group of local peace builders, uniting themselves both at the national context, but also at the international context. some of the formal processes we are involved in, I mean, it's of course linked to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It's also why we have been active in the context of the high-level political forum, also trying to influence how countries and government-led processes like the voluntary national review are being dealt with, and whether or not they are inclusive of viewpoints of other stakeholders. And that's also, I think, where local actors, local peace builders come in. Because the way in the context of the HLPF government's report is not always reflective on the situation that is on the ground. And that also requires a voice of civil society and local peace builders to come in.
Great, thank you so much. Very insightful as well. Does anyone else would like to reflect on Keith's question regarding this line between government and civil society?
Well, let me just buttress what Peter said. As a country team, the CSPPS team as well, we have had some time of not being too active. We've been concerned and very glued to our respective organizations. But again, we could see the added value and advantage of working together. Because of the imposition of the state of emergency, we are now recognizing we can go to our respective offices, and we all have different programs and agenda that we want to ship. But we all do that on a one caveat, is to see how we build peace. So it became clear that CSPPS became the rallying point for us. That's why we have now decided to reshift our focus to say now the crisis has offered another opportunity for us to rally together on one agenda. So yes, it's important to see how such a very common agenda can bring, even if you are on the issue of gender-based violence or on deforestation, or you're advocating for change in governance, but once you can all find your niche on the peace building platform, it's easier to champion such a cause. So I think that's the best way to carry forward. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. I have to go for the next question, which is from Alia San. It says, most time, politics debar peace builders, debar peace builders operations. So what are the strategies do you think they should undertake to ease their operations? Christian, would you like to reflect on that?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I'd love to respond to this question. I'm trying to scroll back to it. It's most time politics debar peace builders operation, so that what are the strategies to take place so that they should undertake to ease their operations? Well, I think it's quite important to note that in this pandemic time, and even before the pandemic time, peace builders were facing shrinking civic spaces. And this is not just a small problem. And I feel like many of us on this call probably have had incidents where they've either been directly threatened because of their work, or their communities has been under pressure from politicians because of its peace building work. So how to probably create space or to engage local peace builders and civil society organizations in addressing this lack of civic space, I think one way is building solidarity and building synergies and networks, as Peter has actually emphasized throughout the call, that it's quite important that organizations working on the front line of peace work together, because alone we are weak, but together we can actually be a strong voice to demand accountability and to demand that our governments align in terms of facilitating peace building process. So that's just really the main point I'd like to add into that comment.
Great, thank you. I see no other questions, but actually comments. If someone would like to make any other question, please raise your hands and we'll give you the floor. Okay.
Marina, I'd like to ask one question, maybe just for further reflection. I know we're talking in general, and we have at least had some highlights about how the pandemic has affected issue on gender-based violence and things, but let's try to look at the issue of youth in general as well. Maybe it's something that we could not reflect on, but I thought it would be helpful to see how we in our respective areas are sometimes looking at how we shift and sometimes realign our focus. And I can share with you one example that we are currently doing. Probably will be helpful. The youth in our country constitute more than 64% of the population, okay? And they have always been seen as the future leader. Unfortunately, they have not had the opportunity to exert themselves, not because of the crisis that we've had. And also, it's been difficult to get them to get focused and sometimes get involved constructively. I'm talking about the group that we consider at risk youth. Now, in our setting, they are seen as those groups that when you hit them, they are the motorcyclists. We call them pen boys. I don't know how you call them in your region, but they have been seen as the most volatile and very much combative young people. Until this pandemic happens, we want to know them to be ex-combatants and violent young people. So we managed to have a sort of a creative project, which we call Motoring from War to Peace, supporting social reintegration of Liberia conflict-affected youth. We call them pen boys. Now, we have to do that along with St. Andrews University in the UK. What are we doing? They have problem with stigmatization, and they have always suffered that. But they make some contribution because the state cannot afford giving them job. So by riding the bikes, they get their money. Yet they have been seen as the bad guys. So we use this opportunity to include them in awareness raising, but at the same time educating them as to how they can help themselves to become destigmatized. So it's like using the opportunity to allow them to have an inward reflection about why people think the way they think about them, but at the same time being useful in helping to spread messages that will protect. So we got like stickers that they are putting on their bags, asking people to have social distancing, carrying one passenger instead of two passengers. So now they begin seen as constructive and productive young people. I thought something like this would also help if we can share some of those ideas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Peter, you have 15 seconds to answer the following question because I have to finalize and give the word back to both you and Christian. How do you, Peter, how do you ensure an internationalized local peace builders platform or a network like that, championed by CSPPS, serves the interests of local peace needs? Sometimes international agendas swallow local priorities. Thank you for the great question, Keith, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but I have to correct you, Keith. We are not an internationalized platform. We are a platform which is a global platform or active at the global level, but the owners of the activities which we try to support as CSPPS is actually local coalitions. It's local peace builders that determine the agenda at the local level. Where needed, we can connect local peace builders with local peace builders in other countries, or we can elevate lessons learned and lessons harvested from local peace building experiences in various country contexts to the international level. I mean, that's the role of an international platform, that we try to harvest and bring those voices, like we did yesterday with the Voices of SDGs 16+ campaign event. We bring them to the international forefront because they need to be heard, they need to be listened to. But the owners of the platform is at the national level, where local peace builders themselves determine the agenda of the platform moving forward. They identify in consultation with each other what urgent matters they want and can address. And then subsequently the platform can potentially support and provide assistance, but the agenda is not determined at the international level. The only thing where we come in also is to facilitate that cross-exchange with other countries, or indeed elevating it to the international level where voices of local peace builders need to be heard. I hope that answers your question.
Final remarks, please, and then after Christian, before we finalize.
Final remarks that I have been talking enough, I think. I mean, it's more interesting to hear the experiences from local peace builders, I think, than hearing me talk all the time. But I think, yeah, some of the issues mentioned in terms of resources, funding, support for local peace building activities, I mean, this resonates also very much in our reports. And I heard Christian also referring to that in the reports that CSP has issued. And that is an issue that our donor colleagues need to be aware of. I mean, this COVID pandemic is impacting in various ways, but it's also impacting in ways that the important front, how do you say that, the response provided by local peace builders is impacted by this because of various reasons, and that needs to be addressed and potentially countered. So that will be my final word.
I think I will not add more to that and just maybe echo the same words that Peter has just shared, that it's quite important that local peace builders get the support that they need in this time. And I'm glad that some of the participants here are actually donors and international actors. So hopefully this message is reaching home. I would like also to come back to the point that Jim was sharing, the example of the work that they're doing with youth. Maybe also to highlight that just yesterday, the United Security Council passed a new resolution on youth and peace building called Resolution 2535, which specifically emphasizes the agency of young peace builders in responding to humanitarian urgencies. So this is really quite important as well in the context of talking about COVID responses and local peace building, to quite put at the center the role that young peace builders have been playing, and to emphasize that with this new resolution, hopefully governments will respond to it and bring more support and open more space, issues of civil participation, shrinking civic space. Hopefully these issues will be addressed, but of course the journey is still quite long. I would like also to end by just saying thank you so much to everyone who has joined this call. Thank you to Rashida, to Fidel, to Jimmy, and to Comfort for shared brilliant insights. And I'd like to highlight that there will be a brief that will come after this call, and we'll be working together with CSPPS to make sure that insights that were shared in this call do not just end after the call ends, but we can carry them through and continue them in other discussions where we are part of. So thank you so much again, and thank you, Marina, for the wonderful, wonderful moderation.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Peter. And thank you so much, Fidel, Jimmy, Rashida, and Comfort. Again, I agree with Christian. It was amazing to hear you. And thank you so much for all the participants today. And I really hope you enjoyed. And yeah, see you soon. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening where you are.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Jimmy. Bye, Fidel.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Please bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Rashida. Bye, Fidel.
Thank you, Christian.
You did a wonderful work. It was really, really helpful to hear you.
Thank you. I was glad to be here.
Really pleasure to meet you, Rashida. It was really great. Thank you.
Hi, Marina. Nice to meet you. Yeah, thank you for hosting me. Yeah.
Rashida,
Right.
Rashida,
Yes.
happy to see
Yes.
you.
Happy to see you.
Accra and Kampala.
Yeah. Kampala is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right,
Bye,
bye-bye.
Comfort. It was nice to hear from you.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.